Welcome friends, fellow Theosophists. Today's presentation is on the seats of memory. Next Sunday at 11 a.m. the focus will be on mental obstructions to meditation. These and other topics presented are based on the ancient message HPB transmitted to the world from the Masters of Wisdom that she named Theosophy. Our aim is to keep the genuine teachings alive and pass them on to their pure form. At 12:30 p.m. every first and third Sunday of each month, we read and discuss selected theosophical writings. At this time, we are studying The Key to Theosophy by HPB. Please join us here at 4865A Cordell Ave, Bethesda, Maryland, and be uplifted by this philosophy that points to a glorious future for mankind. And you can also contact us at our website, on Facebook, or by phone. We are guided by the ULT declaration printed on the back of our program, which is here in print and also on our website. The declaration says, the policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy, without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it in the time or inclination to take part in side issues. The work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declaration, its purposes, and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. Today's reading is from pages 1 to 3, The Voice of the Silence. These instructions are for those ignorant of the dangers of the lower idhi. He who would hear the voice of nada, the soundless sound, and comprehend it, he has to learn the nature of dharana. Having become indifferent to objects of perception, the pupil must seek out the Raja of the senses, the thought producer, he who awakes illusion. The mind is the great slayer of the real, yet the disciples slay the slayer. For when to himself his forms appears unreal, as do on waking all the forms he sees in dreams. When he has ceased to hear the many, he may discern the one, the inner sound which kills the outer. Then only, not till then, shall he forsake the region of Asat, the false, to become unto the real, of Sat, the true. Before the soul can see, the harmony within must be attained, and the fleshly eyes be rendered blind to an illusion. Before the soul can hear, the image, man, has to become as deaf to the roarings as to whispers, to cries of bellowing elephants as to the silvery buzzing of the golden firefly. Before the soul can comprehend the many, may he remember she must unto the silent speaker be united, just as to the form to which the clay is molded, is first united with the potter's mind. For the soul will hear and will remember, and then to the inner ear will speak, the voice of the silence. And now for today's presentation, Seats of Memory.
Good morning, friends. Memory, that innate power of reproducing past impressions by an association of ideas, is generally assumed to be dependent entirely on the orderly functioning of the brain. While the brain is important, it's constantly changing. Our brain cells die out, new ones come in, and our physical brain does not remember many of the impressions that we have received. So where, other than the brain, are these impressions stored? For our recall and recollection in such a way as to have a grasp of our memories through reminiscence, that faculty of memory which is an innate quality of the soul. To exercise soul memory, we must first see that we are all the same in essence: spirit, life, and potential powers. Higher beings differ from the lower orders in that they have developed themselves further than we have. But highest as well as lowest orders are raised from and one with the divine absolute principle. Each one is a seer, a perceiver who stands in the center of his own universe, with the opportunity of knowing all that may be known of the highest. We have arrived at our present position under the law of our own being, set in operation by ourselves. That same law rules in every direction in space and in nature. The return of the same action or preceding impression occurs under the true aspect of memory. It is on the indestructible tablets of the astral light that is stamped the impression of our every thought and action. Future events, effects of long forgotten causes, are already delineated. So the word memory is associated with that power which we unconsciously exert to look with inner sight into the astral light, and there behold the images of past sensations and incidents. On the physical plane, the action of true memory is seen in all those stages associated with the evolution of races, through which the human form goes from conception to birth. We can see month to month, we see illustrations all the time of the development of the baby in the womb. In every act, we are exhibiting true memory, whether we realize it or not. We may not remember how nor when we learned skills such as walking and talking, but the memory as to how to perform such functions is with us. Living on the physical plane, our ideas are connected almost entirely with the physical world. We are no more conscious of our inner planes of being than we are conscious of the physical plane when asleep and shut off from the outside world. Yet there is an active life in those inner departments of our nature, and there is a memory of it. Every plane of consciousness has its own continuously active memory. We may be aware that sleep or death is coming to the body, but we know those states only as we see them in others. When we say I was asleep, we mean that the body was in the sleeping state, while we passed away altogether from this plane for the time being. Then we passed back again from the inner planes to this, picking up the memory of the waking state where we laid it down and leaving behind the memory of what passed on the other side. There is no record made of this physical instrument of the inner planes, for the brain has not been trained or retrained to translate those planes of consciousness except in partial recollections such as may occur in dreams. Dreams attest to the fact that we are alive and active on the inner planes. In them, we think, speak, smell, taste, hear, and move. In our dreams, we don't question our identity, even though the personality presented should be that of some past incarnation. Frequently, that's what it is with dreams. We go deeper and deeper into sleep until we are close to the source of our own being. That is known in Theosophy as Tuya, or the banquet of the gods, where we are participating in the highest. Where the thinker is at work, where we know all that he has, all that has been going on before, all our past incarnations through this one. The memory of all the experiences through which he has been is there in one consecutive whole. That was the paradise of man when he walked with deity, when he knew himself as he really was. While on the material plane we can strive to regain this paragraph of true memory and make that great knowledge of the past usable now. That is the true work of salvation. Only when we understand what we really are shall we be able to take a conscious, active, purposeful part in our evolution. Only when we gain the perception that we are the eternal spirit, that death never touches us, that we may have a conscious life in spirit, not in matter. Only when we begin to think and act from that basis can true memory come through to the brain. Only then can we know for ourselves, have nothing to ask of anyone, but have everything to gain and give to everyone. That true memory is possible for all beings. As improbable as we think it is the case. The memory of purely daily life events is associated with our passional organs and must be first awakened in that organ which first induced the action. A hungry stomach evokes the vision of a past banquet because its action is reflected and repeated in the personal mind. But even before the memory of the personal self radiates the vision from the tablets wherein are stored the experiences of one's daily life, even to the minutest details, the memory of the stomach has already evoked the same. So the stomach has already told us all this stuff. But no memory of a purely daily life function of a physical or lower mental nature, such as eating and drinking, enjoying personal sensual pleasures, and transacting business to the detriment of others, has anything to do with the higher mind or ego, as opposed to ego. The ego is the highest form. Nor has it any direct dealings on this physical plane with either our brain or our heart, as the brain and the heart or the organs of a power higher than the personality. Every organ in our body has a memory of its own kind. The whole human body is a vast record of impressions connected with its parent organ. While physical memory is often obscured, one fact crowding out another weaker one. At the moment of the great change that man calls death, that which we call memory seems to return to us in all its vigor and freshness. At the last moment, the whole life is reflected in our memory and emerges from all the forgotten nooks and corners. Picture after picture, one event after the other. The dying brain dislodges memory with a strong, supreme impulse, and memory restores faithfully every impression that has been entrusted to it during the period of the brain's activity. That flash of memory of long-forgotten scenes of mortal life is simply the sudden glimpse which the struggling soul gets into the silent galleries where his history is depicted in imperishable colors. This may well be due simply to the fact that for a few seconds at least, our two memories, our highest and lowest states of consciousness, blend together, thus forming one. And the dying find themselves on a plane wherein there is neither past nor future, but all is one present. The barrier for every person is not in the memory, but in the false ideas of life according to which they act. However much the soul remembers, if we are using the brain contrary to the nature of the soul, the brain cannot translate its impressions. The thinker must transfer the memory of the soul to the brain. He can do so only by thinking and acting along right lines during active waking consciousness until the brain responds to the ideas and learns to transmit what occurs while the body is inoperative. Then the true memory of the past, that is, in the soul, is our knowledge in the brain. Again, nothing that takes place can ever be lost from the scanned record of a man's life. We may think we don't remember, and it may be unperceived by our consciousness, yet it will still be recorded in the tablets of the astral light. Personal memory is a fiction of the psychologist, said H.P.B. There are cells in our brain that receive and convey sensations and impressions, but once done, their mission is accomplished. These cells of the brain, the supposed organ of memory, are the receivers and conveyors of all the pictures and impressions of the past, not their retainers. Under various conditions and stimuli, they can receive instantaneously the reflection of these astral images back again. Remembrance, recollection, memory, but they do not preserve them. But the universal memory preserves every notion, every motion, the slightest wave and feeling that ripples the waves of differentiated nature of man or of the universe. Occultists can trace every atom in the universe to one unity or universal life. The occultists are consistent with their doctrine of spirit and soul when speaking of memory in every atom. The collective aggregation of atoms from the soul of our universe, each atom of which is a soul, a monad, a little universe endowed with consciousness, hence with memory. So we have memory throughout all. The Theosophy knows how to suspend the mechanical action of the brain. That brain is hard to keep under control, as we all know. His visions will be as clear as truth itself, uncolored and undistorted. The seer can never take flickering shadows of realities, for his memory is completely subjected to his will, as is the rest of the body, and he receives impressions directly from the spirit. Between his objective and subjective selves, there are no obstructive mediums. This is the real spiritual seership, in which, according to an expression of Plato, soul is raised above all inferior good, that, quote, that which is supreme, which is simple, pure, and unchangeable, without form, color, or human qualities, the God or nous. The masters have the true memory of every step through which they have gone. The knowledge of all past civilizations. The understanding of all that every human being has to experience. The recognition of all the laws ruling evolution. As custodians of that knowledge, and as our elder brothers, they stand ready to help mankind in the only way open to them under karma, by recording as much of that knowledge as we can assimilate, by directing us to its proper use for the benefit of all other human beings and all of beings around us, that all humanity may advance to the true goal. Greater and greater individualization, wider and wider range of perception of the objects of evolution. Our elder brothers are those who choose to return and take up again a body of the race, as Jesus did, that he may help those who know less than he does. So we are never alone. Never will there come a time when those great beings will cease from that labor, which is a labor of love. But each of us must determine for ourselves, sooner or later, whether to go through eons of suffering and millions of lives of ignorance, or to follow the path they show, the path which leads straight to the goal, the power of direct cognition of truth, the power of real memory. In Psychic and Noetic Action, HPV said, not even the cleverest psychologist will ever be able to solve the mystery of the human mind, unless he knows something of and is prepared to admit the presence of the psychic and the noetic dual element. This means that he must have to admit a lower animal and a higher or divine mind in man, or what is known in occultism as the personal and the impersonal egos. Between the psychic and the noetic, between the personality and the individuality, between those two, there exists the same abyss as between a Jack the Ripper and a holy Buddha. Unless the psychologist accepts all this, he will ever be led into a quagmire. H.P. Blavatsky classified the immoral entity as the divine mind. Its reflection in what we call mind in the intellect. It's reflected in the mind. These are our two sources of memory. These two, the higher manas, just connect here, and kama manas. And there's this bridge in between that we're working for. It's the rational but earthly or physical intellect of man, that's kama manas, that is subject to the influence of matter. Kama manas is the lower self, manifesting through our organic system and acting on this plane of illusion. Kama manas imagines itself the ego sum, and thus falls under what Buddhists brand the heresy of separateness. From the first, the individuality, do we have that up there? It's the highest of us. Somewhere up there is the individuality. It precedes all the noetic element. From the second, the personality, the psychic, the terrestrial wisdom at best, influenced by all the chaotic stimuli of the passions of the living body. The higher ego cannot act directly on the body, as its consciousness belongs to quite another plane. The lower self does act directly on the body. The action and behavior of the lower self depend on free will and choice. So we can make a choice here to go this way or stay down here and wallow around in what we got now. It can gravitate toward the parrot, the Father in heaven, or the animal man of flesh, which it informs. The higher ego, as part of the essence of the universal mind, is unconditionally omniscient on its own plane, and only potentially so in our terrestrial sphere. And it has to act solely through its alter ego, the personal self. So the universal mind is the vehicle of all knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. We might catch occasionally glimpses of that which is beyond the senses of man, and transmit the glimpses to certain brain cells unknown to science in their functions. I believe they're talking about the pineal gland there, which is not active in us anymore, but we can reactivate that, thus making a man a seer, a soothsayer, and a prophet. Yet the memory of bygone events, especially of the earthly, has its seat in the personal ego alone. HPB in the key to Theosophy says the clue lies in the double consciousness of our mind, and also in the dual nature of the mental principle. There is a spiritual consciousness illuminated by the light of Buddhi. We had the sevenfold nature of man last week on the board. Buddhi and Atma being the highest principle that we partake of, the divine mind. The vehicle of Atma is Buddhi. That which subjectively perceives abstractions and the sentient consciousness, the lower light, inseparable from our physical brain and senses. This latter consciousness, which is the lower light, is held in subjection by the brain and physical senses, and being in its turn equally dependent on them, must of course fade out and finally die with the disappearance of the brain and physical senses. It is only the spiritual kind of consciousness whose root lies in eternity, which survives and lives forever, and may therefore be regarded as immortal. Everything else belongs to passing illusions. So, as the song says, life is but a dream. HPB in the Keys to Theosophy also says, try to imagine a spirit, a celestial being, divine in its essential nature, yet not pure enough to be one with the all. To achieve this, to so purify its nature as to finally gain that goal, it must pass through every experience and feeling that exists in the universe. It has therefore to gain experience in the lower kingdoms and ascend higher and still higher to pass through every experience on the human planes. In its very essence, it is thought, and is therefore called in its plurality Manasa Putra, the sons of the universal mind. This individualized thought is the real ego, the thinking entity imprisoned in a case of flesh and bones. This is surely a spiritual entity, no matter, and such entities are the incarnating egos that inform the bundle of animal matter called mankind, and whose names are Manasa, or minds. Manasa, or minds, yeah. But once imprisoned or incarnate, their essence becomes dual. That is to say, the rays of the eternal divine mind, considered as individual entities, assume a twofold attribute, which is, one, their essential inherent characteristic, their higher mind, and two, the human quality of thinking or animal cognition, rationalized owing to the superiority of the human brain, the karma tending or the lower manas. One gravitates toward buddhi, the other toward downward, to the seat of passions and animal desires. Now I'm going to wrap it up with what Mr. Judge said in the Ocean of Theosophy. The human brain is a superior organism, and Manas uses it to reason from premise to conclusions. This differentiates man from animal, for the animal acts from automatic and so-called instinctual impulses, whereas the man can use reason. This is a lower aspect of the thinker, or manas, and not, as some have supposed, the highest and best gift belonging to man. Its higher aspect is intuitional. These impulses, whereas a man can use reason. It's intuitional, which knows and does not depend on reason. The lower and purely intellectual is nearest to the principle of desire, and is thus distinguished from the intuitional, which has affinity for the spiritual principles above. If the thinker becomes wholly intellectual, the entire nature begins to tend downward. For intellect alone is cold, heartless, selfish, because it is not laid up by the two other principles of buddhi and atma, which really boils down to intellect is important, but we have to have, you know, love and kindness and understanding to get us to where we need to go, to uplift all around us. We're going to close it here and open the floor for comments, discussions, or
I believe it was Einstein who said that, of course, the intellect has powerful muscles, but it has no personality.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we put it in the terms we got, I think what he really it's got no it's got no personality. We got to try work to develop our personality. But the point is, when we're thinking about this concept here, it's we're developing the perfect part of us, which evolves into enlarging the individuality, the perfect part of us. I think that's what he was getting at there. I think I heard that statement from Einstein too. Well, that's our mission from life to life to life, and it is a fact in nature, reincarnation. We have discussions on that too. That this personality is, it goes in and out. This stays with us, the individuality from life to life, because that's perfect. And the only part that will stay with us from life to life is the perfect aspect of us. Comment, question?
Well, don't we get a new personality in each life?
Yep.
So it's the skandhas that determine what kind of personality you're going to be in your next incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
Does it not?
Yes, we're constantly giving off skandhas all the time. These things are not, you know, we don't automatically make a decision today to be good. It is part of our thinking that we develop throughout. We're giving off these skandhas all the time as we're trying to get better, and as we improve ourselves, we improve all around us by say token. But the skandhas do come back to us, that we attract back when we come back into this body, and that is basis for what personality we develop. Was that close to you on that?
Well, did you not say that we have free will and
Absolutely.
choice? So if the personality assumes that sum total, then it is making those decisions freely, based on its own reasoning powers without any light from above, or if it accepts that there is a higher light and listens, then the decision making improves because we're listening to that little voice in our head, which is our conscience, telling us not to do. It never says what to do, but it definitely lets us know when we're doing something wrong. And a lot of people say, well, I went ahead and did it, and I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway because I didn't listen to my own conscience. So if we have free will and choices, then its opposite result would come back to us, would it not?
Absolutely.
Oh.
We all have this, and that's why you said here that we can develop all the intellect we want, and school is important to try to get to understanding all this stuff. But we all have this. The farmer, sometimes that's the one that makes the most sense. The limited education at the end of the row, that they have a lot of basically common sense is what it boils down to, and we have to keep that with us at all times, and have that human understanding that we're part of this process. Jesus said, "You can do greater things than I." So where do we stand in that? And we're all here to learn and make a difference.
We still can use our higher potential for making the right decisions, not go with the personal the selfish and the materialistic aspect of us, we do have that choice.
Of course.
You said that we have to cultivate the personality. That is not the student's understanding. In each scene, in other words, in every life, you have a different personality playing that scene. It is our noble characteristics that we have to elevate and develop, not the personality.
Of course. Well, the personality is part of, I mean, we need a personality if we're going to exist on this earth. While we are in the body, we need that personality.
Not necessarily.
But it should be this, not
Not
this.
necessarily.
Personality is the lower nature. That's the higher nature.
The masters exist. They do have a body.
Yes.
They move amongst men. They don't have personalities. They can immobilize all of their lower aspects. And HPV says, so can we. If we develop our higher aspect, we can be in the world, but we don't have to be of the world.
Absolutely.
We can move amongst men. We can do our work. In fact, she says, the mind, the Manasaputra, goes out, knows what it needs to do,
Right.
does it, and returns. And
Yeah.
that's
This is a very misunderstood area, by the way, because people think, well, you know, if I'm going to lose my personality, I don't want to have anything to do with this process. But you're not losing your personality. You're developing this right here. This doesn't matter. This is
it matters.
Well, it matters, but this is you're saying the masters are living from the individuality side because they're fully developed. We're a sevenfold nature. They're more of a threefold nature. They're already there. You know, their whole body is interwoven with that threefold, where we are under development.
You're touching on my question, because you said earlier that every organ has a memory, and if the organs in the body are, you know, new for that life, the memory, part of it must come from the skandhas, as was mentioned. And many people experience, you know, health issues and stuff, and the body is part of the lower. And so the question is, if we're trying to raise up the entire being, the atoms, personality, the individuality, how much attention do we give to health? Do we just ignore it and just try and work on our higher? Do we try to work on everything? You know, it seems like a persistent question. How much attention do you give?
So things like personality, you don't really give much attention to. It said that you know, when we are in the business world, we're looking at the bottom line. We're looking for results. In the correct philosophy, in this philosophy, we're looking at first getting the thinking principle correct, because all else follows. From the thinking principle, if we're thinking right, you know, all these lives that you just alluded to are all dependent on that thinking principle. And they get uplifted by the correct principle. And that they're interwoven. That's why I said that the masters have such a refined intertwining that they can just kind of take on a body at will, and they have that power, so that body is that they attract the skandhas we were talking about earlier. I don't know whether they have skandhas, but they attract the materials for that body so that everything is in tune. That's why they have a more of a threefold nature than we do. You want to add to that? Okay.
But just to address the question put forward about health, in that noetic action, actually that process is explained, where we are told that atoms, which make the molecular constitution of the cell, which is the building block of the human body, is a spiritual entity. it is not physical. That is why it can never be found on the physical plane. Depending then on the process you just outlined, if the thinking is material and selfish and personal, the atom responds to that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is coming from the universal, harmonious, concern for the welfare of all attitude, then the atom responds to its higher divine mind, and that is when harmony is established among all of the constituent parts of the body, and then health ensues. And she says, if there is a disparity between the elements, and the elements in this case is defined as fire, air, water in the physical body, then disparity arises from those not being in harmony with one another. She has a list in Secret Doctrine 2, somewhere 583, where the human principles, the universal principles, and the molecular constitution of the elements are listed. Hydrogen, I believe, represents fire, Kama, and she lists all the others below it.
And that kind of gets at the physicians of old operated on those three principles. They were able to, I hear stories that they could carry 5 or 6 pouches, 5 or 6 items in their pouch, items of the, alluding to what you may have been talking about, and cure a lot of problems. These days, we kind of cut it out, and we think we're curing it that way. The issue, though, is that if we're thinking properly and thinking healthily along the right lines, the body will be nourished and harmonious and so forth. And we have, I mean, that's the law right now, that we are going to be born one day in a body and die in leave a body as when it wears out, or when our use of it is finished, and we're supposed to treat that body as a temple while we're in it, but we're not that body.
Not to identify with it.
So that's the first, kind of the first rule. We don't fall in love with our body. We all do. So that's the tendency of the lower mind. Mm-hmm. And we treat it with respect and dignity, and move on. So that seems like our fundamental thinking can help us get in the way. If we're thinking along those lines, I think it can help us with the harmonious thinking and so forth. And that, what is the opposite of harmony? Dis-ease. So
I think Mr. Judge has an article also where he says that we have to consider what comes to us, our own doing, and be grateful for the pain that comes, because it's trying to teach us a lesson. And as soon as we learn it, the cause disappears, and so does the pain.
Well, that is a major challenge when we have significant pain, to try to understand that it's there to teach us a lesson. It hurts, that's really it's really tough. But I hear where you're coming from, and that is correct. That's a teaching up. That's an opportunity to learn.
But he also says that it doesn't mean that we should not take medication to alleviate our condition.
He said, if you're sick, go to the doctor. If you do whatever you can in the correct conditions on the physical plane. Yes.
Yeah, and he says that not to go looking for cures, mind cures or other style of medicine, but to allow it to come through on the physical plane. If you push it backwards, then it will come back to you again and again until you sort it out, because it has already worked itself from the higher plane of the mind, and it is now exhibiting its symptomology on the physical plane, so that it needs to be let to flow outward and not pushed backwards, is the recommendation from the Theosophical writings.
Right. But we have I think a lot of the medical community does understand that, but it seems like when you go in, they kind of, I don't know, it's my view, sometimes they direct you to stuff that you know, that you may or may not need. But, you know, we have to live in whatever conditions we find ourselves, and we're here to learn whatever lesson there is to learn from that.
Okay.
And by participating and being in the world but not of the world, it seems like the way to go, if we can do that.
But Mr. Judge also warns us that sometimes the mind goes crooked, and that it has kind of grooved itself a pathway and it follows it automatically, and that it takes indomitable willpower even on the physical plane to stop that habitual way it handles itself, and with indomitable willpower shut it off and open another channel for its expression. And I think that is very difficult to do.
Very difficult and critically important. That's why the focus is on right thinking. If you don't, if your mind, if your brain is trying to go on the wrong path, on a selfish path and so forth, you shut it off.
But sometimes also
bring in those voluntary visitors that are helpful.
Sorry, but sometimes the personality is not actually capable of perceiving its own error, that it has grooved itself into that position, and people cannot tell you from the outside, because then resistance builds.
Then
you have to figure out for yourself that it is the wrong thing to do.
We run into that all the time,
that is really
don't we?
difficult for us at the system.
Yeah, it's very difficult to, especially when we think it's important to admit we're in error. Yes?
Question. When we look around, we see that almost half of the population expresses concern for the other, and the other half is turning inward, that I come first. But the United States was not based on that premise. When Tom Paine came and tried to free the United States from the influence of the British Islands and the King, his motto was, I belong to the world. I don't belong to a country, a world. The world is my home, and to do good is what he chose to do. So why this reversal in the early 21st century towards segregationalism and division again? Should we not be moving forward in this day and age of universal love and compassion expressed in the Aquarian age, which is the key point of humanity? Why then the United States should be reversing its stand and become segregational again?
Well, it's hard to, let's put it this way. Yes, it's human nature. You know, if you're struggling to get up there, or whatever you're trying to do in the material world, once you're there, and then you think about how, you know, your resources and stuff like that, and then it's I think kind of a human nature thing to try to lock yourself in and others out, or lock others out. You see what's happening just down the road. We got the terrorist attacks, and now the whole what used to be a college, kind of the equivalent of a college campus place, you know, has the guards around and the steel fences and so forth. It's again an opportunity. We have great opportunities in this days of Kali Yuga to make a difference.
We're all brothers and sisters
We
all
are
over
brothers
the
and
world.
sisters all over the world. Yes.
It does not make any difference where you're born. It depends on the ideal held
Right.
that we're all united into one humanity. We cannot say that we're brothers and sisters and promulgate universal brotherhood and not practice it, because all the other countries in the world where speech is suppressed look towards United States for their upliftment out of that condition. If we abandon our place in the world, then who's going to fulfill it?
Yes. And guess where all that starts? Starts from within. And we have to, you know, yeah, we're part of a community, we're part of a nation and so forth. That doesn't mean that, you know, that means we have this responsibility to take the right action, whatever our position is. And you can be an individual on the street and make a great deal of difference. It's not an easy, you know, this is a messy world we live in. Not only this country, all over the world.
I think one perspective might be that you can't force people into unity. That's what the Soviet Union tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
People naturally self-segregate, just as philosophers do in this room. You can't force the world's population to go achieve higher levels of philosophy, even if it's right. People are tribal, and they will self-segregate on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have to keep trying to spread the philosophy of Theosophy, but that's one perspective.
Mm-hmm. And along those lines too, Theosophy is a philosophy, to my knowledge, has never ever been successfully challenged. It lays out a process which we need to go through, and we can shortcut that process a lot and enter the golden age or stay in Kali Yuga, the age we're in now. And it's the individual choices that's going to take us one way or the other, individually and collectively. And what you're saying is absolutely correct. The philosophy is one thing, you know, but our application of it is wonderful to have it, but then we become individuals. And just because we are trying to follow that philosophy doesn't mean that we're not going to have differences among ourselves. That can be worked out as long as we adhere to the higher principles.
But everybody understands love, kindness, and generosity.
Right.
No one is saying that all humanity at this stage in their development is suited to receive high philosophical tenets. But at its sure, Mr. Judge says, all can benefit from it. That universal love is a quality of nature. It's not just in humanity, but nature works under a strict justice, and it, just like the sunlight, it distributes its wealth equally everywhere without any consideration as to who's receiving it. If the sunlight had to say, well, I'm just going to go shine in the United States, what will happen to the rest of the world? It doesn't. It shines on all of it, on all humanity. That the spiritual essence is of one root. All of us, everything comes from it, not just humanity, but everything else comes from it too. In the Secret Doctrine, we are told that the essence of our progenitors, if you like, gods, not God, but gods, comes from its universal aspect and exhibits itself in the solar system, as in all the other solar systems, which we do not know of, but nevertheless exhibits itself in the solar system. So it whirls around 7 times and becomes concrete, and then it's going to whirl around and return on its return journey to the spiritual essence it came from. So this process is endless. Coming and going is a process. So regardless of where humanity is, as human beings, love, kindness, generosity, compassion does not have a cost attached to it. This is the innate quality of the heart. So if when it is expressed outwardly, then everybody benefits from it.
Those are essential parameters: love, kindness, and compassion. We all have to have it.
We have it.
We
Not
do have
all
it.
have to have it.
True, we all have it within us, and we have to express it in this proper way. Discrimination comes in there too, and probably if we're going to have to err, we should be erring on the side of compassion and universal love.
But aren't there good and evil spirits that attach to people, individuals that, from the astral plane that are able to enter?
Sure, that's why we have to learn, sharpen up our discrimination. Because we do have, we have offsetting forces throughout all of nature. They say there's a fine line between good and evil and stuff like that. Yeah, we have to make those decisions, trying to work toward the good. And if our thinking process is in that direction, we will wind up getting that. We probably won't do. We may not do it in a lifetime. We may not do it in 10 lifetimes, but we will do it. The will has to be there. We have to have a strong will. Motivation.
But you can only attract forces from the outside that are similar to your nature. So if your thinking is good, your activity is good, you're a beneficent human being towards others, those powers have absolutely nothing to touch you with. If your thinking is crooked and you are not for humanity, you're not to benefit others, and you're a mean human being, then whatever is out there that is similar to it, you will attract that. So we can, HPV says, raise children who are Buddha-like that will benefit humanity in the future, or we can raise wicked children depending what our nature is and who we are going to attract to ourselves as souls to raise.
Yeah. I think our time is about up, so we bring it to a close today. Next week we'll have a discussion on mental obstructions to meditation, and on the 26th, the psychic and spiritual man. We have talked then, I believe. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.